as we'll be reporting back on the group work. And we're going to hear first from our online group. So I believe it's Ilias will be presenting the results of the group.
Sure, can do. How many minutes do we have?
Excuse me, 5 minutes, please.
Okay.
The key points.
Yes. So our group decided on addressing the alleviation of workload in agroecology. So the idea is to conduct participatory action research to co-create the alleviation of workload in a context-appropriate way. So each place with its needs to alleviate workload, and that adheres to all 13 agroecological principles. So what was raised is in terms of gaps is that the kind of workload that is too much varies very much from place to place. So it's a very context-specific problem, but very widespread. There are also safety concerns. So it's not just too much work, but also risky work. And there's a need to bridge knowledge differences among farmers. So some farmers know more about how to address certain problems of excessive workload or how to alleviate workload. And intergenerational knowledge exchange could be strengthened in this context. And gender gaps, key issues of gender inequities in workload need to be addressed in any intervention that addresses alleviating workload. And then the desired outcomes, or the one-sentence value proposition. So the idea is to conduct participatory action research to alleviate the workload in a context-appropriate way, which adheres to all 13 agroecological principles. So the desired outcomes are to be in a practical way to alleviate the actual workload of participants in their subsequent working activities, both addressing safety, efficiency, time spent through agroecological innovations, but also to facilitate cross-border farmer-to-farmer learning. So the actual learning process is also a desired outcome. So some farmers teach other farmers of what they've experienced works well to alleviate the workload, can inspire subsequent trainings and self-organized farmer-to-farmer training sessions on other subjects or other challenges that are not restricted to alleviating workload, but could address other challenges such as plant health or other issues locally identified. So one important component would be to build the capacity for farmers to conduct their own farmer-to-farmer training afterwards in an independent way. And to champion local solutions and traditional knowledge and local innovations that are overlooked, but can be made visible and be shared through those farmer-to-farmer exchanges. And this saved labor could then be used for more high-value tasks that can provide a better return on the time spent or on the work effort spent. For example, on value addition or processing or diversifying to other crops that have been neglected and so on. So it can also lead to farmers gaining recognition in their communities and to attract youth into farming by not representing such a strenuous task or activity, but rather a high skill professional activity that has wider societal kind of appeal because it regenerates or it restores degraded ecosystems and at the same time produces food and other goods in the same place at the same time. So this has in some places attracted youth to stay in farming or to get into farming, and so actually counteract the rural to urban migration, representing an attractive livelihood perspective for youth in agriculture through diversified agroecological farming. So one innovative component of this proposal would be to take this farmer-to-farmer exchange to an international or intercontinental level, because in many countries on a local and national level, such farmer-to-farmer trainings are already very widely practiced, or at least have strong experiences in many countries. But maybe a relatively novel component would be to take that to an international level and to specifically address this labor constraint that's so widely being presented as a big challenge for agroecological transitions. And a key component of the outcomes would also be not just for participants, in-person participants, to learn from the process, but also to have that documented in video format, in other media, and then share that on the TPP communities of practice platform so that it can be widely accessed and appropriately tagged with images and keywords so that people can find what they're looking for in an easy way. And also to enable adaptation to new contexts. So for people with a similar context, but in another country, can find the media documenting this farmer-to-farmer training videos and media, but also for new contexts to or for farmers or technical people in other contexts, be able to be inspired and adapt such solutions that alleviate labor. So geographic locations, we said, could be really any place where host farmers can share and have some key solutions to share with others, and have partners, local partners, to connect them with the international audience that can then find participants in other countries. So we've got a list of countries that could potentially host such a farmer-to-farmer training. And in terms of scale, it would be by design cross-scale, but build on the wealthy experience of local and national farmer-to-farmer training methodologies already practiced widely. And key partners would be, farmer-to-farmer groups that have already practiced this, and individuals or organizations who work with farmers who have some key solutions already tried out and that can alleviate the workload or make workload less risky. And then NGOs, civil society organizations, TPP communities of practice members, academia, local government. And so to close, co-design, we have identified a couple of people who are already interested in participating, and as a potential donor. The European Commission was flagged, but so at this point, I think I can close. Please compliment if I have forgotten anything or you feel that needs to be addressed something else. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the online group. This is wonderful. We'd like to hear now the report back from another group. Any volunteer?
So basically our group was focusing on the policy, and we had a great set of contributions from all the teams. So this collective idea that I'm going to present here. So the main gap that we identified was a strategic operationalization failure when it comes to policy. And the value proposition is improving conditions for enabling implementation of food system strategy. The major goal that we want to address is government adapt and implement effective, actionable, or impactful food system transformation policy. We identified 3 main key components and then a number of outputs and outcomes. So first with the component 1 is policy diagnosis, which focuses largely on diagnosis of policy ecosystem. For example, looking into both success and failure cases. The second component is analysis of political economy. And then the third is institutional coordination and advocacy for change. In terms of outputs for policy diagnosis, the first output is a comparative analysis, a comparative policy analysis at the national and sub-national level. Synthesis of documents based on, for example, the success and failure cases for different countries. The third is a coalition of researchers and advocacy group. For component 2, political economy analysis, the first output is an actor map. The second is a political economy analysis, which can also be translated into reports and brief. And then for the third component on institutional coordination and advocacy for change, first is participation in multi-stakeholder platforms. Second, capacity development via working groups. Third, socializing knowledge output with key partners and advocacy group. For the related outputs for policy diagnosis, first is having a compelling evidence to engage with key actors and policy champions. And then second, on political economy analysis, is thinking about a sustainable investment cases that we can use to engage with key actors. And finally, on institutional coordination, our outcome is modalities and also lobby or advocacy modalities, and also incentive-based win-win strategies. So for our key partners, we want to engage with relevant ministries, private sector, political actors, parliamentarians, business community, the regional economic community, community-based organizations or civil society organizations, extension, education and research, and then media. For donors, our idea is that this needs to be a long-term rather than short-term commitment. So we want to have a more negotiated framework for working with donors who are committed, and this cannot just be one donor, but a cross-section of donors. And we want to create a platform of donors to engage and commit to those long-term goals, which could include both bilateral and also multilateral organizations, and possibly also thinking about win-win public and private sector engagement. So that's all from the policy group.
Very, very good. Thank you very much to the policy group for your proposal to address chronic implementation failure and advocacy work. So who wants to go next?
So while we are waiting for the slide, okay, yeah. Great. So our group was addressing the domain of viability, and we had several gaps identified from the previous discussions in the morning. And it was all about markets and how to differentiate agroecological produced products in the market and how to create those incentives back to the producers. In other words, how to create the market demand, particularly for agroecologically produced products. I'll go through these flip charts quite quickly. We have quite a number of them. So we looked at certification areas. And then first we did kind of a mapping, like what are the certification labels that we already have. We have organic certification, we have fair trade, we have participatory guarantee systems, and then we have agroecology. And they have a lot of overlap, but they're also different. So we and then we didn't want to go into the organic certification because that's kind of like a subset of what we want to achieve. And the other disadvantage is that it's very expensive, and consumers and producers have to pay for that system. So participatory guarantee system is something that's already being implemented. We've heard it from Brazil. I was very excited to hear that yesterday. It's also being implemented in Kenya. It's a community-based system, a community kind of guarantee system that this is a safely produced vegetable or product, which considers all the 13 principles of agroecology and is based on trust. Yeah, there's no inspector that you have to pay. So that's the way we wanted to go forward. And then we decided at what scale do we want to implement that, or how do we want to test this PGS? We decided we focus on local markets rather than national markets or international markets. So the keywords there are local consumers, trust, the central role of processors, because processors of agriculture products, they bring all the supply chains together, but also they play a pivotal role for the next part of the value chain, the traders, the transporters up to the retailers. And traceability is something that we really wanted to capture, and that's easier to guarantee in a small territorial approach than in a national level. So the concept note is there, you see it on the screen. How can we differentiate agroecological products without certification? And the value proposition was to create efficient markets for agroecological produce that is profitable to value chain actors and promoting sustainable food systems and ecosystems. So then we looked at the research questions and objectives. The first one was about testing participatory guarantee systems in territorial dimensions. The second objective was to identify the drivers of demand. So looking from the demand side, what is it that a consumer wants in terms of agroecological products? Because there's so many different, are they really concerned about all these 13 different principles? Then another objective was what role do the different value chain actors play in differentiation in the market? Another objective was examining the effect of these markets on employment and food sovereignty. And then the last objective was how do these agroecological markets influence adoption of and scale of agroecological principles at farm level? So in other words, the influence back from markets back to the farm. We looked at, we decided then where to focus. And from the participants we had in our group, we decided Kenya, Uganda, Senegal, and Gambia would be interesting areas to start kicking off this kind of research. Why? Because there's political will in all those areas, and in East Africa and these countries, there's already quite a number of initiatives that we can build on. So the value proposition, we've covered that. It's about the services that provide benefits to all these different actors, but it's been captured there nicely in a sentence. So then we looked at the outputs and outcomes. Yeah. So you have activities that produce outputs, and then these outputs generate outcomes. So we've got 4 outputs identified, and we identified then the outcomes of it. The first one was the first output would be a functioning participatory guarantee system in an X number of places and environments. An environment is not just an climatic environment, is the whole political and everything agroecological environment. And then the outcome of that would be increased acceptance of agroecological produced products from farm to fork. Then the second one was a better understanding of producer versus consumer demands. Like we have producers' motives for adopting agroecology, and we have consumers who might have different opinions or different motives. So the outcome is a better linkage between the producers and the consumers in terms of matching the demands and supply. The third one was to map identifying roles of different actors in the value chain. So the different actors, what kind of role do they play? 2 minutes?
Yeah, let's wrap up. 1 minute.
So so more targeted interventions for these different actors. And the last one was well-functioning markets. So that results in better employment and food sovereignty, and scale and adoption of these principles at farm level. So partners, we have research partners, international, national, universities, academia, decision makers, policy makers, traders, trade organizations, the African agroecological entrepreneurs in Senegal, NGOs, CBOs, processors, and local government offices. Donors, all of them, but in particularly EU, BioVision, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, MESPS. We are building on previous projects such as the CGIR, Agroecology Initiative, Veggies for Planet and People, World Veg SNV, the ZR Safe Veg and Fair, the TPP domains viability nutrition, and a whole range of agroecological principles. And then last but not least, we have a second concept note, which I'll only give the title. And the second concept note is bridging the gap between consumer and producer motives and incentives for agroecologically produced foods. And we can do a whole new research project on that as well.
Wow. Thank you so much for this incredible work on the markets for agroecology. I believe we have one more group. 2 more. Okay, sorry. Who would like to present for one group? So,
Daria, could you put on the slide for Remy, please?
So it was a group moderated by Francisco. So we had many discussion and many areas to be addressed. In the end, we came up with 2 main points: the system approach that I will develop afterwards, and also a discussion about standard on agroecology. So you have standard, your input and output. For output, we could see like PGIs also. It's more about maybe other groups like policy viability, but yeah, it can be still discussed. But we agreed that maybe for this, we could have a process to discuss about input, for instance, about code of conduct for bio-input could be useful for agroecology. So this can be something we could start maybe already to discuss about this. So the system approach, so that's one we developed. So the gap to be addressed, so you see the gaps are wide. It was not easy. We had a lot of discussion. Do we speak only about co-creation and science and implementation? Because we are on to the TPP, but we speak about system. We say it was important to speak about everybody, about food systems who are broken, or can we fix them? So we need to address widely. So there is a science implementation, the imbalance of power within the food system that contributes to the food insecurity. So we need to address that in a way or another. Also important aspect like public good preservation that are not valued for farmers who are working for public good, and it's not valued. So who will pay that? Or can we have incentive for farmers to change? Also, the understanding of transformation, because we all speak about transformation, but we don't put everybody the same thing behind. There is more time, is more incremental. So let's define clearly what is transformation and how we can really change. The sentence to value. So in the end, the idea is to use the word knowledge because knowledge is wide. All kind of knowledge. It's not only the science we know. It's not only scientists. It's farmer. It's knowledge for everybody. So the idea is to go from knowledge to action and accelerate food system transformation. So accelerate is quite ambitious because it's not going so fast already, but there are food system transformation everywhere, here and there. So it was important to value the different initiatives at different scale and not to say it starts with us. These are the outcomes. So range system. No, we decided to have case study. You will see that case study at all different levels with like TPP projects. So we spoke a lot about the system change in Andhra Pradesh and also the co-impact methodology, because the idea is really to assess how the system is working to find solution. So a synthesis across the case, of course, recommendation, and guidelines and tools for food system transformation. And also to be further, we didn't discuss that together, but I think you won't be shocked, but to be further tested in TPP project. We want to have a product, but we want to implement it, to test it, and to see if we can trigger a change and in which condition. So the second slide. So we want to be global. If we can be in 5 regions, that would be perfect. We will see what's the TPP, what kind of project we have within TPP, for instance. So we want to have like the different scales. So the landscape approach, but also at national level and also multinational level. So across, we had the example of like Victoria with 5 countries, for instance. So it's interesting because the analysis is different. So we can have a multi-scale approach and analysis. So the partners, so it will be multi-stakeholder approach. So I won't quote all the partners, but we had Andhra Pradesh who was a candidate, also Moringa County, who is working in the same direction as Andhra Pradesh. So it's really interesting also to go and to compare Mexico, and of course we will see. We have not found all the places. But also, of course, TPP, Agroecology Coalition, FAO, it was mentioned for the GIS, so globally important heritages that it can bring. So the multi-stakeholder approach, so with impact methodology. And what is really interesting and maybe new, I will say, is that we don't want to have only the farmer approach, because we are really farmer-centered when we discuss. So we really want to take the farmer approach, but also make the study with all the different all the value chain, but only the value chain policymakers, so to make case study for everyone on them and to have their findings. So leading person, we have already a few people who volunteers. So I won't give name, but it's nice. Yeah. So yeah, we will be on TPP project, and yeah, this was a good example, Andhra Pradesh example. And if you want to add something, you can, of course, as a members.
Thank you for this amazing systems concept note. Brilliant. Can we now hear from the last group?
I thought Dave was presenting it, not just writing the slide. Okay, so the outside, what was it called? Outside domains topic that we picked. There were many there, but we picked up one around doing research differently. TPP says we're doing research differently. And we felt there's a need to say, all right, so we're not just doing it differently, what are we doing? How are we doing it differently? What's different about what we're doing? And to actually do some research on research processes to be able to say a bit more about what it means to do things differently. And of all the sorts of research that we could do differently, we want to try and do the research, the action-based research that underpins all agroecology transitions. We want to see if we can do that differently. So there's a hypothesis there. This is a research project we're designing, so there's a hypothesis that agroecological transitions are accelerated if the PAR approaches that are used are enhanced by, and there are a series of ways in which we feel they could be enhanced. There's not going to be one way that is relevant everywhere, but there are many ways in which the sort of, if you like, classic PAR approaches can be enhanced. Strength with hypothesizing can usefully be enhanced, increasing the range of stakeholders involved, building systems analysis more explicitly into that process, explicitly working at multi-scale rather than, for example, just at farm scale, and so on. So the gaps addressed by this are the limitations which are perceived in current participatory action research and interventions, yeah, I'm trying to not repeat myself. It says the challenge in different ways work at different scales. Let's leave it like that. So the outputs, we know that there is a huge amount already written about this. Several people have said, is there really anything different in the way agroecology transitions are based around participatory research compared to things that have been going on for the last 40 years? So we want to actually do, and the feeling was that, yes, there is a huge amount of experience and knowledge basis for doing work in a participatory action way, and yet very often they're not actually being implemented by the people working on the ground. So some sort of systemized compilation of existing approaches and experiences, a synthesis of the existing evidence of what things are working where, for who, when, and why, and then trying to see where there seem to be significant gaps, and actually using a participatory action research approach to fill in some of those gaps and develop evidence for our hypothesis by using a participatory action research. So this is a sort of meta participation approach to doing research on the participatory action research. So what that means is we do that sort of desk work, the review. On the basis of that, we develop criteria for case studies that we want to engage with. A case study is a grounded place where there really is a transition process in operation. There are groups of farmers, communities, whatever. There are people engaged with them. They're trying to advance an agroecology process. On the basis of the criteria that we develop, we try and find cases that we can engage with and enhance or experiment with some additions to the processes that they're using, and then, you know, reflect on what's working, assess what's working, and see whether we can get some evidence to support our hypothesis there. And there's a team of people who have offered to take this forward, co-led by Valentina and Bernard.